Welcome back to That Dad Guy. It's another episode of Stamp versus Stamp. If you're unsure what Stamp versus Stamp is, well, every month, myself and Snail Mail with Smokey, we do a collaboration. We do something a little quirky. We kind of have fun making videos between the two of us. We mash ours two together, and we hope you like it. But for the most part, it's stuff that we enjoy doing. It's a little bit of history sometimes. Sometimes it's just a little bit of truth versus lie. But it always involves stamps from around the world and our take on them and kind of what they mean to us. And yeah, I think it's just a good way of seeing a different perspective of collecting stamps. Well, in today's episode, the two of us have teamed up once again, and we're doing something a little bit different once again. I've given him 10 words and he's given me 10 words. And with those 10 words, we're going to either create a story or do a flow of our video. It's up to you to figure out what 10 words were given. I mean, you can write it down on a piece of paper, trying to think what the words were. It's a little fun game for you at home. I'm doing a little twist on it once again, though. I've put the 10 words that he's given me, I've put them in a random generator. And just so you can tell that I'm making up this story, this flow, this episode all on the fly, I'll have no idea what word I've got to put into the sentence next until the generator tells me. So every once in a while, I'm going to click on the wheel to spin. It's going to give me a word, and then my flow, my sentence will have to go in that direction. And then periodically, I'm going to throw some stamps in there so you can see where we get stamp versus stamp. That's my take on it. You're going to see what Smokey's take is when you go and watch his video. We have the identical thumbnails, so they're easy to find. And if you missed some of the older episodes, you can go back and watch those too. So let's get started. So we're going to give the wheel a spin, and then we'll start off on this journey, if you will. Where's this journey going to take us? I have no idea. It's always in motion. It's going to be a perpetual learning curve, and it's going to take us where it's going to take us. That's for sure. So for today, let's start here. What sort of music do you like? I always get that question all the time. I'm big into 60s. The Beatles are my favorite band, but there was a lot of great music that came out of the 60s, including the Byrds were in the 60s. The Rolling Stones, of course, started in that time frame too. The Who in Canada, we had the Guess Who that kind of started in the 70s a little bit. But the biggest thing that come out of music scene in the 60s, of course, was Woodstock. Woodstock was a culmination of so many great artists all coming together, trying to do something for charity, trying to just have an event. It was supposed to be a small concert that turned into a massive concert in a New York farmer's field. It was a scene that, there was probably a little bit of drugs going on, certainly some alcohol going on, free love, all that was happening in the 60s. It was a groovy scene. One of the artists that played there that day was Janis Joplin, and this stamp that came out in 2014 by the United States is a great indication of, a great description of Janis Joplin. Love the stamp, kind of says it all. One of the things, though, that kind of gets overshadowed, that 1969 was Woodstock, 1970, Janis Joplin died. Well, you know, another thing that happened in the 60s was the show Star Trek. Smokey and I are both big Trekkies, I guess, sci-fi. We love that sort of thing. How can you go wrong with Captain Kirk and the Enterprise and Spock? Well, one of the things about the Enterprise that maybe some of you don't know, but history buffs will certainly know, it was a warship. It wasn't this made-up word. The USS Enterprise wasn't the first of its kind. Certainly, if you watch the shows, you'll see references. I believe it's Jean-Luc Picard has a bunch of ships in his office, and they're all different versions of the Enterprise, including the very first one, which came out in 1775. It was this sloop that was a battleship. They only had it for 2 years, though. In 1777, they lit it on fire, so it wasn't to be captured. But that was the very first USS Enterprise. One of the more famous, though, USS Enterprises was the 7th christened one. It was an aircraft carrier during the Second World War. And this particular stamp came out in 1993 by Guyana, with a 50 mark value on it. It was Scott number 2702, and it was part of the World War II series of stamps that Guyana put out for that year. So good representation of the war. That war, though, it was, well, World War I was supposed to be the war to end all wars. World War II was certainly just a reaction to World War I. The German people had felt that they were oppressed in the treaty at the end of the First World War, and rose up from that. But had World War II gone a little bit different, we probably would have been living in a bit of a dystopian society for sure. Had the Germans won and continued to do the Aryan race cleansing of all the other races that they seem were inferior. We kind of see a little bit of that going on in history once again now, so hopefully we will learn from our mistakes and not go back down that path. Hopefully cooler heads will prevail and peace will come. So fingers crossed on that with what's going on in Ukraine and Palestine, Israel, Russia, Taiwan, all sorts of things going on here. But one of the things that we can learn from is all the different books that we have out there on history. I was a history major in university, and you know, we read all sorts of books on what happened in the past. So you could say they were kind of a treatise books, if you will, all on the different knowledges on certain subjects. So we try to get that, we try to learn from that. Well, speaking of learning and history, I know Smokey loves churches, and I found this great series of stamps. It came out in 1950 in New Zealand. Let me just check the Scott number on that here, if I have it. 274 to 278. Yeah, they were great stamps. They celebrated the 100th anniversary of the Canterbury University College. So Canterbury College was formed in 1850, but it became a university in 1873. So they put out this series of stamps to celebrate their 100th anniversary of it being a college. It's the second oldest university in New Zealand, and they put out these 5 great stamps. I love the stamps from that time frame. Anything kind of from the 30s through to the 50s. Globally, there's beautiful stamps seem to be putting out. But I digress in what I am trying to say to you about this history and these stamps that are out there. I don't want to put myself on this this platform that I'm trying to preach to, because I'm certainly not trying to preach to you in any sort of way at all. It's not my intention to do so. So let's move forward and see what we have next to do. Now, are you thinking that maybe some of the words that I'm adding in here, maybe that are a bit longer, maybe those words, maybe that's what I'm doing, I'm not sure. But I'll try not to do too much tomfoolery and fool you into what's happening with this dialogue and this story. I wonder, have you ever thought of how things begin? Let me just check something here real quick on the beginning of words. Do you need a thesaurus in order to sometimes figure out what words mean, or find out what the synonym of words is? I sometimes do. I sometimes get lost in my own train of thought too. Does that ever happen to you, where you're trying to figure out, you know, sometimes you feel like you've come to the top of the mountain when you're telling a story, and you're almost on that precipitous edge. You don't want to fall over in any sort of way, but you got to try to figure out how to climb down from where you were. That's sometimes how I feel when I'm telling a story, that I'm not sure where I'm going to go next. And when I'm doing it this way, it's hard to tell what my next objective is going to be. So let me spin the wheel once again and try to figure out what I'm going to talk about. Well, one of the stamps that I did want to talk about before I go too far is, I mean, we just finished the Super Bowl. We just finished having the American version of football, because I know many of you, football is soccer for you. But this particular stamp that came out that I want to talk about, It came out in 2003 by the United States. It was a 37-cent stamp. It was Scott number 3808. It was of this football player and wrestler too, well known in both categories. He was one of the all-time. He was listed as one of the 75 greatest football players ever. He was one of the in the top 100. It must be below 75, but he was one of the top 100 Chicago Bears too. He was a Canadian that played in an American sport at the time, so I thought it was a great stamp to pick between Canada and US, where it's Smokey and myself doing it, and maybe some people hadn't heard of this all-time great football player. He was, well, his name was Bronco Nagurski. Sorry for butchering that. I was excited to say it, but he was a three-time champion in the NFL. He also was a professional wrestler from like 1941 to 1960. He was born in 1908, and he passed away in 1990. So he had an amazing career, and he was top in his field, in his position too. The rumor was that when he was discovered, university came up to Canada looking for another young gentleman, and Bronco was out in the field and he was plowing away, and the scout came up to him to ask him where to go, and he just lifted up the plow that he was using and used that as a pointer in which direction. And at that point, the scout said, I got to have this guy. He's got so much strength to him. He was 6'2". He was bigger than a lot of the guys at that point when he was playing football. I mean, we're talking in the 20s, the 30s, the 40s. He was a big gentleman. So there was this stamp that came out talking about the legends of the game. Well, the legends of the game. There's a lot of things that go on in sports. Not all of them have been great lately. There's been a bunch of indiscretions that have happened, let's say. And we got to remember that sport was supposed to be for fun. It's supposed to be for entertainment. The kids would go out in the yard and play baseball and basketball and play soccer, just getting up to a bunch of shenanigans, and that's really all that it should be in the end. The dollar figure has gotten in, people wanting paychecks and going for the big bucks. It's become a commercial-driven enterprise. Even kids at young ages, parents are trying to put them in special classes and courses and teams to make it to the professional leagues, because that's where the dollar figures are. We can't forget that they're still kids. Let them play the game and do the fun things. When I think of kids, I think of other than going outside and playing with their friends, they have collectibles. We collect stamps or coins. Or my daughter collected stuffed animals, and one of her favorite stuffed animals was a narwhal. And when I saw this stamp that came out in, when did it come out? It was a Canadian stamp that came out in 1968. Scott number 480. It was worth 5 cents. It reminds me of my daughter, because my daughter used to carry that stuffed narwhal everywhere she went. And now she's 20 years old. She's not carrying stuffed animals around anymore. Time has flown by. It's interesting to see how it goes. When we talk about history happens in our family too. If you don't believe me that time is going by quickly, remember when you had hair. Remember when you were in high school, when you were in grade school, the mischief that you got up to along the way. Did we learn from some of the mistakes we made? Probably. Probably we did. We've had a few along the way. I'm sure we all have. Even those of us that try to stay on the straight and narrow as much as possible, we do make mistakes. And learning from those mistakes, whether it's you in your personal life, with your family, the politicians that are out there, nations, just make sure we do learn from those mistakes. Let's not do them over and over again. So somewhere in there were 10 words that Smokey gave me. Did you figure out what they were? Did you write them down? Let's check with Smokey and see what they were.
So the 10 mystery words that I have for you, Rob, are: number 1, dystopian. Number 2, narwhal. Number 3, precipitous. Number 4, shenanigans. Number 5, perpetual. Number 6, groovy. Number 7, enterprise. Number 8, Canterbury. Number 9, Bronco. And number 10, treatise. I know you're going to have a lot of fun with these words, and I know you're going to write a great story. Can't wait to hear it.
Thanks, Smokey. I hope you had as much fun making your video as I had of making mine. Once again, these ideas are a little quirky, and we get a chance to show off some stamps from different countries and talk a little bit about them. And hopefully the people at home that are watching are having a great time too, trying to figure out where things are going, what's going to happen next. Yeah. What are we going to do in another month's time? I don't know. But stay tuned for Stamp versus Stamp, and make sure you go check out Snail Mail with Smokey's video as well. Like, subscribe to both of ours, leave positive comments, share the channels to other people that you might think will like them, and put the notification bells on so you don't miss out on any videos. And if you have missed out on some of them, go back and watch them. They're still there. You might as well watch them. Have a magical week. What, Polo? You say like, subscribe, share, and tell all your friends?
Who's a good boy? Who's a good boy?